Elon Musk, he's talked about how difficult, how insanely difficult it's been to run this company. But what do you make of him putting it quite that way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, back in April, there was an April Fool's gag where Elon kind of took a picture of himself, looking, as if he were homeless or something, and said that, Tesla is bankrupt. And and what we're learning is that wasn't as much of a joke as I think, everybody thought it was at the time. I mean, as you said, though, this was kind of out in the open. If you were reading his tweets, if you were looking at kind of the frantic nature of the sort of messages that were coming out of Tesla, as well as the reporting from Bloomberg and others, I mean, you knew that things were bad, that they were really, pulling out every stop that they could to get cars out the door and really struggling with it.
So here's the question, though. They avoided collapse for now, but, is that going to be the sort of state of being for Tesla for the foreseeable future, where they're always, a few weeks away from some potential disaster?
I think that assuming they're able to keep the production numbers, where they are now, assuming that the company, that this is real, that they're really able to produce, 5,000 Model 3 sedans a week, the company's in, a dramatically better position than it was, say, this summer. And I think if you look at what's happened with the stock market, the stock is up significantly, or it's sort of back where it was. I think investors are starting to recognize that. As you said, though, it's not clear that production is totally sustainable, and we still don't know exactly what the margins are. And then the other car makers are coming. There was news today that GM is laying people off, trying to refocus around things like electric vehicles. Lots of electric cars coming out of Germany. So the competition is going to increase. And while I think people see that people are starting to think of that this summer as kind of being a bottom for Tesla in terms of, Elon Musk's maybe mental state and motivation and everything, but also for the market. It's the future success is not totally, assured.
So let's talk about the other car makers, because as you mentioned, GM laying off 14,000 salaried staff and factory workers, also closing several factory locations. And part of that is because they are investing more in electric cars, more in their self-driving unit. What does that mean for Tesla?
I mean, it means that, there's competition. These big car makers like GM, they have not, although actually GM has done a lot better than a lot of others in terms of hybrids and electrics and things like that. But they have not been able to kind of tap consumer demand in the way that Tesla has. On the other hand, they are really good at doing large-scale production. So I think the fear would be, if you were a Tesla investor, the fear would be that once these big car companies really start to figure it out, they're going to be able to undercut Tesla on price. They have these, amazing networks of marketing and car dealerships and enormous ad budgets. Tesla doesn't really have any of those things, and they'll just sort of take over the electric car market. The counter-argument would be that Tesla has spent years and years kind of establishing itself as the name in electric cars. And maybe consumers now recognize that, and if they're going to buy an electric car, they're going to want to buy an electric car from Elon Musk rather than from GM.
Well, this GM news is interesting because Musk has talked about, in general, just how hard it is to be a car maker, Tesla or not. But it seems like no car maker is comfortable. I mean, are there any car makers that, are resting on their laurels right now because they've invested in new technology and the future looks bright? I mean, if the future is going to be challenging for Tesla, as challenging as it is for GM, is anybody doing well? Well,
and this is the argument that the big believers in Tesla, the people who are still, the people who are excited about the funding secured tweet, I mean, their basic point is that the entire auto industry is facing disruption of car ownership, where, self-driving cars are going to come along, people aren't going to buy electric cars, and that Tesla, as a company that's sort of ahead of the game there, has a chance. I don't think it's clear, how much of that thesis is going to really bear out. A lot of times, people have gotten excited about driverless cars, and companies have not yet hit the really important milestone. So I don't think it's clear how quickly that's going to happen, and it may be a case where people will continue buying gas-powered SUVs for a long time, which would not be great for Tesla.